So we've got this list of 10 steps, and this is what happens after obtaining planning permission and before the builder puts any shovels in the ground. So number 1 on this list, and this is a crucial step, is you need to obtain detailed working drawings. Right. So these drawings, right? These working drawings, these are not to avoid any confusion. These working drawings are not the drawings that you submit to planning and what you've got your planning permission was based on, are they?
No. I mean, how this 2 separate types of drawings came about originally was in the old days when architects were drawing by hand and scraping out on the old tracing paper and scraping out corrections with a razor blade. What they did was, so that they didn't draw too much and have to correct too much, because when you submit for a plan application, quite often the planners will come back and say, no, we don't like this, can you change that, can you change this, can you change that? And if they had have prepared the whole working drawings at the same time, that's a lot of alteration work.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it started off, that's how it starts off. So an architect would always say, we'll do the planning drawings first. Once we get planning drawings, then we'll do the architectural drawings, the working drawings. Although these days, with everything being on CAD, it almost all happens automatically. So for my money, if the job isn't too big, say it's I don't know, just a 2-story extension at the side of your house, I would say to the architect to just go for 1 set of drawings, because most of what they put on these drawings is cut and paste. You see what I mean? And it's not all by hand anymore. So there is no reason to have this 2-tier drawing style, if you like. Okay. But the point is, they still operate like that. I mean, the old RIBA architects, the good RIBA architects, do still operate like that for reasons of their own, mainly because that's how they're trained. It's just the way they operate. It's almost traditional. But some of the newer guys, they can do it all in a one-er. But here's the thing. 9 times out of 10, as you know, the drawings that go in for your plan application are only planning drawings. There is no point in sending those planning drawings once you've obtained planning permission to a builder or builders and asking for a quotation, because there is nowhere near enough information on those drawings for them to give you an accurate price. Now, I know that there are lots of builders out there who will do it, but, it's not good practice, because they can't possibly give you an accurate price without all the information on those drawings. So your very next step, once you've got your planning permission, is go straight back to your architect, designer, architectural technician, whatever it is, whatever they are. You go back to them and say, right, can we now get started on the working drawings? Sometimes called construction drawings, working drawings, detailed drawings, anything like that. But what they do, these are drawings prepared for construction so that you can build accurately from this set of drawings. Now, that set of drawings, once completed, fully prepared, usually along with a good specification, has to go straight to the building inspectors, so building control, whether it be your local council building control or whether it be a private building control company. But you have to go there. You have to obtain building regulation approval, which is usually, if your architect knows what he's doing, which I would hope they do, he or she's doing, I should say, and I hope they do, then obviously getting building regulation approval is a no-brainer. It's not the same as planning. It's certainly not. But obtaining building control approval is just making sure that you are building to building regulations.
Yeah, we'll touch on that again in a bit, because that's actually one of the points further on. But in terms of getting these working drawings, right, from your architect, from your designer, what is there extra information? So, like, I know that, especially if you're doing an extension, right, or you're putting an extra story on top of an existing extension, or just you're adding a second story. Someone needs to dig trial holes, right? to have a look at the ground.
Yeah, well, sorry to interrupt, but here's the thing. Trial holes are, in my opinion, crucial and should always be carried out. It's a mistake that is often made by so many people. Now, what tends to happen is that, remember I said a lot of this is cut and paste work.
Yeah.
So by the architect. So quite often they won't have carried out a ground investigation before they start their construction drawings, and they will just be generic. So they will say in their foundation design, meter deep foundations with so much concrete in, end of story, so wide, so deep. Okay, but that's not good enough, because this is work that is unforeseen. Yeah. Now, if ever you're going to get caught with extras, it's going to be in the unforeseen, in the ground, stuff you can't see. So the best way to get your foundations designed is to, along with the architect or a structural engineer, which the architect should employ for you on your behalf, unless you know one, of course, you should arrange to have trial holes dug, especially if you are going with a first floor story. So in other words, another story above an existing. If you're going above an existing building, so say you've got a garage at the side of your house with a utility room at the back, and you want to put an extension, a first floor extension, right across front to back, okay? Yeah. Then it's really important that you find and locate the existing foundations to make sure that those foundations are strong enough, deep enough, and accurate enough for you to build on top of. But equally, if you have nothing at the side of your house, but you need to dig down to put in, for new foundations at the side of your house because you're having a two-story extension at the side or perhaps at the back, then my recommendation is this. Firstly, you dig a trial hole to establish where the existing foundations on the existing house that you're going to abut are, exactly where they are. You need to establish their location and what they're made of. Because for all you know, your house could be on a raft, it could be on piles, it could be on strip foundations. You need to find out what they are, okay? Secondly, just dig a foundation, a trial hole in the vicinity of the new foundation, okay? Now, this trial hole only needs to be, I don't know, say 50 centimetres by 50 centimetres, if you can dig it, and keep going down until that metre deep, at least, so that somebody can come out, your architect can come out and inspect that ground.
Yeah.
Once he's inspected that ground and established exactly what it is, of course, if he sees the problem, he'll bring in the structural engineer. But once he knows exactly what type of ground that is, he can then make sure that he designs your foundations accurately. This way, there will be no unforeseen.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people get put off with this because of the cost involved. But believe you me, the cost involved in digging 2-3 little trial holes is far less than getting caught out with we didn't know the ground was like that. The building inspector's been out and he said, that's not good enough ground. You've now got to dig 2 meters. Yeah. At least you'll know what you're faced with before you put a shovel in, before you start the work. So not only can the foundations be designed in accordance with what you find, but the job can be priced up accurately.
Yeah. And so this is actually moving into the second point now, which is meet with your architect. So you said, your architect or the structural engineer or designer technician should come out and actually physically inspect these holes, right? And then so at this stage as well, this is when we wanted to have the discussion with your architect about kind of like all aspects of your build now. So like we're talking about, what type of bricks that you're going to be using, right down to things like, the doors, the door handles and paint. And this is when you're having that discussion now at this stage, right?
Yeah. Well, you can imagine I get hundreds of drawings coming across my desks. I don't know quite how to put this. Lots of people sending their drawings asking me to provide them with a price. And it's very rare that I ever come across a set of drawings that are accurately detailed enough for me to give the potential client an accurate price, okay? Which is why so much of our work is estimated. The reason for that is because architects these days, it's not just architects, it's clients as well, because for an architect, well, let's put it this way. You need to have your architect sit with you and go through every detail of the job, okay? Every little piece of detail, from what type of foundations, what your walls are going to be built of, your roofing. But this has to be discussed, not left to the architect. But then, more importantly, you need to go through and discuss things like skirting boards. What type of architraves you're going to have, what type of doors, what type of ironmongery, how you want the walls finished. Are they tiles? What type of tiles? All these materials, all these items, all these processes need to be selected and firmed up before you go to a builder. Because just imagine, 9 times out of 10, an architect will draw, especially, if it's just an extension, everybody gets a bit blasé about it, and they just sort of design an extension, you get your plan permission, then they do the basic working drawings, which gives you foundation, walls, roof, drainage, that sort of stuff, okay? But then the rest of it is down to you, because they move it over to the client, what type of bathroom suite, client's choice windows, client's choice this. Well, of course, if I'm the builder pricing up client's choice, how do I know what client's choice is? And then, so quite often we have to introduce things like provisional sums. Now, I've explained before what a provisional sum is.
Yeah.
And we try and avoid provisional sums like the plague, because it goes against accuracy, basically, in terms of pricing the job up. So it's absolutely crucial that you spend that money. And this is why people don't do it, because the architect wants to charge for this work.
Extra money, yeah.
Extra money. But believe you me, there is nothing safer for any client to do than to pay that architect the money to sit down with them, no matter how long it takes, and go through every aspect of that job, of their proposed works, in the minutest detail. Get it all down on the drawings and a specification, okay, with a written specification. Specification is a document that, a worded document that runs alongside the drawings, giving even more detail and sort of correlates with the drawings, okay? Yeah. So, but it is crucial that you have that paperwork for cost purposes and for accuracy. I keep going on about this word accuracy because it's a broad word. It means accuracy in the build, accuracy in the costings, accuracy in the budgetings. Accuracy in the types of materials. And so many people don't do it. Of course, it causes arguments at the end. I didn't know this. The builder says I didn't allow for that. There's not enough contractual paperwork that goes between them at the time this is all going on. Yeah. It causes even more problems. It needs to be avoided. We need to move away from this type of construction and become more professional. So my advice is this, and I implore people to please take this advice, or any of my potential clients, although we are the designers as well in a lot of cases, but my potential clients are this. Please make sure you pay the architect that bit more money so that you can get all this work done accurately. Don't believe that by not paying the architect, by getting the architect to do the minimum, it's going to give you more money to put into the building. Because that, in all of my experience, which is over 40 years, is not true. It doesn't happen, okay? Because you always get caught out. Put in the prep work. Prepare yourself. Get everything done correctly, and then start building. And you won't have an extra cost. Well, if you do, it'll be minimal.
Yeah, it's like that. It's the famous saying, isn't it? What failing to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly. Or prepare. And that's the point.
Yeah, go on.
And that's the point. So, it's all about the planning. People, because there's nothing worse than, you imagine yourself, you've been given a price, you've gone to 4 builders with the same set of drawings that don't have the information. You don't know they don't have all the information that's required.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you. They're going to
you don't know what you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So, the architect says, here's your drawings. Oh, that's fine. Thank you very much. Here's my payment. Away I go. The architect, this is not to disrespect architects, of course, because there are some damn good ones out there who will insist you go down this route. But in my experience, very few. They usually leave it up to a client's choice as to how far they want to go. But you need to be in a place where you're not facing a big extra bill because you've merrily gone ahead. You don't know what you don't know. You think you've been out and done the right thing. You've got 4 builders quoted for it, quoting for all the work. You've gone for what you think is the best price for whatever reason that is, only to find that they start digging the foundations meter deep, as shown on the drawings. At this point, everything's hunky-dory. But the building inspector comes out, and without anybody knowing, he said, hold on a second, I can see a bit of, I don't know, clay down there, or a bit of this. I want you to go down an extra half a metre. Well, you start going down an extra half a metre, that's labour, that's machinery cost, that's material cost, and whatever you dig out, you've got to put back in. So invariably, more concrete. So labour, putting the concrete in. So straight away, you're into the realms of, crikey, our budget's gone awry already. We've got to deal with this. And the same with, it's not just foundations where this happens. I have to emphasise this. It could be in the roof.
Yeah.
You could, if the architect hasn't been out and inspected your existing roof, if you're going to have an extension that's going to join onto your existing roof, he hasn't been up there and had a look, made sure he knows how your existing roof's constructed. So, for example, if you live in a 1930s house, more often than not, that 1930s house will have what we call a cut roof, which is basically another term for a handmade roof, rather than with the trusses that you see, the big triangles coming across on. So rather than the trusses, so there'll be purlins. There could be binders in there. There could be all this sorts of things that need to be followed through, that will be affected if you cut your roof into that roof. You've got to stabilise the existing roof. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's all of this in every aspect of the build. The preparation is crucial.
Yeah. So out of 100 jobs that come across your desk, how many would you say, just like as a guesstimate, how many people have adequate detailed working drawings and specifications for you to be able to give a full proper price? How many people actually do it?
Easy. I would say there's probably no more than 95%, 95 out of 100 that have proper accurate drawings. But let me qualify that a bit, because
95% of people don't have accurate
drawings, enough drawings. They believe they have accurate enough drawings, but they don't.
Yeah.
But let me qualify that. I mean, the ones that mostly come across accurate or come across my desk as accurate are corporate drawings. Corporate drawings, for some reason, people who want corporate work doing usually know to pay all the money because they are usually better budgeted. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Better funded. But there are very few people that actually even know to go that further step with the architect. This sounds terrible because it sounds like I'm trying to discredit architects in any way, and I'm not. I need to make that absolutely clear. But if you don't know that you need these special drawings, 9 times out of 10, the architect's going to say, well, that's one job done, I've done my bit, my working drawings, and away we go. They may well offer you the opportunity of going into great detail, but without necessarily explaining the implications of not following that advice, not going down that route. So quite often you just don't get involved, and you just say, well, they're my working drawings, thank you very much. So no different. I mean, most of our estimates go out, or quotations go out, with provisional sums, purely for that reason, because there's not enough information on there. So we have to just, allow a sum against items that we have no information for. But we know the difference is with me and my clients, of course, is that I spot this and I manage it and I tell them before. So I don't get myself in a situation with clients where they can't afford to do the job at the start that I've quoted them for. And that's it. Whether that changes later on, of course, is a different story for whatever reason. But that I make sure that we start off accurately.
Yeah. All right. Well, we pretty much touched on point 3 there as well, which is receive the full design specification from your architect. So we've done all of those steps. Yeah. And then I think it's touched briefly on... Can
I just elaborate on the design specification?
Yeah, go on.
That actually means you need to tell... If you're having a new bathroom, new kitchen, new tiles, if you want special gates on the outside of your house, or electric gates, or you want a special type of paint to go on all the new skirting boards, or you can think of them. Think of all these items. Then tell your architect. That's what the specification's for. Tell them what you're looking for, who it's made by or manufactured by, where you can find it, what sort of price it is, so the architect can build it in. He can measure it up. You can go to the supplier, tell them that the supplier can tell you what the lead time on this product is, and it can all get built into the specification. So all the information that the builder needs to obtain that product is in that specification. So, his procurement costs can be allowed for because he knows about it. He's been informed because you've already done the work. You've told him where to go and find it, how much it's going to cost. It's not necessarily a PC. You're not going in for what's called a prime cost. You're going in for just the information to say to them, there you go, that's where you can get it from. That's the specific paint we want on our skirting boards, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. And then so after that, so you've got the proper working drawings, you've got your full specification. Step 4 on the list is to submit to local building control for building regulation approval.
Of course.
Who does that?
Well,
do you have to do that as the client, or is that the architect does that for you?
No, the architect will normally do that for you. Now let me explain. That's of course if you want him to do it, but 9 times out of 10 the architect will do that for you. But you're now at a situation where potentially you've had this meeting with your architect. Everything is designed in exactly as you want it. You've checked it, gone over it, checked it. You can actually visualize your house built because you've got all the information. There are no grey areas. But there is one point that you cannot miss out. And this, quite often I'm seeing this more and more. And in my opinion, it's wrong. What's happening is that architects are writing in notes on the drawing saying lintels to structural engineers' details. So quite often, if they haven't managed to get a structural engineer to detail all the works within this build that require the structural engineer's intervention, they leave it out and put the onus onto you, believe it or not. And all they do is put notes in there to say, to be built in accordance with structural engineer's details. Those details are not there because the architect hasn't engaged with the structural engineer. Do you see? So that could be a big grey area. What size beams you need if you're knocking out all of this sort of stuff. 9 times out of 10, the architect will say, well, we're going to have a beam across there to engineers' details. Well, where's the engineer's details? Well, we never went to an engineer. We just got... So what will happen is, when you now submit those drawings for building regulation approval, the building inspectors will write back and say, ask for more information. At which point you'll say, well, you'll go back to the architect and say, what side? Well, we hadn't got it. You might remember we didn't employ a structural engineer. So you're going to have to employ a structural engineer to get that information. And you're caught out again. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So always make sure that your architect or designer or architectural technician engages and employs the structural engineer, so that when at the time you submit all of your working drawings into building control, you don't get any comeback from the building inspectors. No questions. It's all there, plain sailing. Not only that, it's all there for the builders to price accurately.
Yeah. Okay, and then we've done that, submitted them, everything was fine. And I know this isn't necessary for all builds, but step 5 is invoke the Party Wall Act.
Right. Okay. Very important point. This is a very important point. I've been caught with this myself a couple of times. Okay. Now, this is a difficult one. There is a Party Wall Act that is available for anybody on any .gov site to go and read. I'm not going to go into the Party Wall Act, but suffice to say, it's all about if you're digging usually within 2 or 3 meters, sometimes less, sometimes more. There are conditions if you're within 6 meters, but it's usually within 3 meters.
Is that a condition of your planning permission?
So I'm going to get to that. There is a law that says if you're going to start digging your foundations in the proximity within 3 meters of your neighbour's foundations, then you have a problem. You may need to invoke the Party Wall Act, okay? And there are professionals out there that will do that for you. So you can just Google Party Wall experts and there'll be a load of them that will do it and they'll take you through the process, which is something I don't really want to get into. But more often than not these days, it is a condition on your planning, or at least advice on your planning. So when your planning permission comes through, take care to read the conditions carefully back to front, because quite often one of the conditions may well be invoke the Party Wall Act, okay? Which is quite a simple process, and generally I would always advise that you have a professional do it. Don't always try and do it yourself, because this is a point of law. So for my money, always get a professional to do it for you. Now, sometimes it can be overcome just by a simple agreement between you and the neighbour. Look, we're starting our extension next week. We're digging. Are you okay with it? Yes. But now the crucial thing is, here's the thing you really need to understand. So you've got this 3 metre rule, okay? But it's no good measuring your neighbour's wall and your wall and saying, oh, well, we're 3.1. So we're away, the distance between them is 3.1 metres. So we're 10 centimetres, 100 millimetres away from their house. So we don't need to invoke the Party Wall Act. Not true. So imagine your walls go down like that. If this is your house wall, the foundations come out in the wall down at the bottom. So the 3 metre rule is from the edge of their foundations to the edge of your foundations. So normally I would say that the 2 walls, if you think that your foundations come up like that, go like that, and then your walls, the distance between the walls would need to be at least 3.5 metres for you to be anywhere near safe. That's not saying if they measure 3.5 metres you're safe, right? But I'm saying what I suppose I'm trying to say is if they're not at least 3.5 metres away, you may have an issue. Okay, so again, when you dig your trial hole, you'll be going back to that. You'll be able to establish where your footings are going to be, or at least where your existing footings are, and then that will give you half of an accurate measurement to go back to the neighbours with. Of course, you're going to need permission to dig down on the neighbour's ground if their house boundary is on your forms the boundary, if you like.
Yeah.
So very, very important.
Right. Okay. And just get a professional to do it, and then get through to the other side of it.
Yeah, there is a particular process to follow in obtaining the permission and your award, if you like, but it has to be done properly and accurately. Again, it's all about accuracy, which is why you need a professional to do it.
Yeah. So point 6, after the party wall business, is to consult with an independent quantity surveyor.
Right, you've now got all your drawings, your specifications, everything you need to obtain a price. Now, how good are you to understand that price as they come back in from your 4 builders? You're the layman. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, you wouldn't be good enough to try, but quite often these you're trying to compare like for like, but the wording on every builder's quotation will come in differently and quite often will be confusing. Now, if you have your architect run the tender process, then 9 times out of 10 you will be safe, because the architect is knowledgeable enough to be able to understand all the prices that come in accurately and go back to these builders and say, you haven't written this, have you included for this, have you? Well, yes, we have. Well, then you need to write back to me and tell me so, and all the rest of it. Okay, so he'll be able to spot if there's things that aren't included. He'll be able to understand the terminology that goes on in these drawings. You're not. You can't. Okay, so if you're not going with your architect to run the tender process for you, then my advice, strong advice, is go to an independent quantity surveyor. They will price this job up. All right, it'll cost you a few quid, but you've got to do it, because, again, it will save you a lot of money going forward. Now, they will cost the job up based on your local rates, based on your the local rates for materials and labour. Okay, and they will give you a complete breakdown, nuts and bolts breakdown of everything you should be expected to see on a builder's quotation. Okay, not necessarily in the same order, not necessarily in the same format, but you will then have a bottom line figure that a quantity surveyor says that is the right figure for you to expect to have to pay. So when your builders come in, you're not necessarily just pricing builder A against builder B, C, D, and saying, well, he looks all right to me, because for all you know, all 4 of them could be mega busy and so be mega expensive, or they could all be undercutting themselves just to get in the door. You don't know. An independent quantity surveyor whom you've employed will make sure that you have complete accuracy. So he is giving you a price at, say, £100,000 to build your work. If your jobs start coming in at, 150, 160, 180, you're going to ask why. If they start coming in at 80,000, 90,000, you're going to ask why. Okay, so you would expect all yours to come in within around 5 to 10% of the cost that the quantity surveyor is giving you. Okay, so that is, in my opinion, something you really, really must do if you are not having the architect control the tender process.
Right.
So either way, you'd have to pay the architect for the tender process or pay yourself. You don't have to do these things. This is advice. But heaven knows, I've seen so many people caught short because they don't even know what they're saying yes to. It looks like it could be the right price because it's one of the cheaper ones, and they look like they've taken everything, but you haven't quite understood the terminology. So,
And it's kind of like a final sense check, isn't it? They're going to say, look, you're missing this, you're missing that if you are, or you haven't thought about this, you haven't thought about that, and it's going to stop you getting any further down that process where you were talking about earlier, like the unforeseen.
Yeah, exactly. But not only that, keep your quantity surveyor retained so that when these builders' prices come in, you start to look at one, you start to favour one, he can then you can then go back to him with a contract and ask him and say, look, this is what the builders want. This is how the builder wants to contract me. Is this right? Are all the figures in?
Yeah.
Of course, you always need a solicitor to overlook any legal contract, as we know. But, they'll just look at it from a legal perspective. From the cost perspective, your quantity surveyor, half an hour's work, he'll know exactly if what they're quoting for is contractually accurate for you to then sign on the dotted line if and when your advisors to this contract say yes. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And so you've done all that with your quantity surveyor, which takes us on to the next step, which is then you can actually go out now, right? You've got enough information to go out and get an accurate quote from a builder. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you've now, as we just said, you've now gone there. You've got your quantity surveyor. You've got your prices. You can now go out to a builder. The builders always expect the builders to come around with a site visit, with the exception of COVID-19, of course. But, in normal circumstances, always expect the builder to make an appointment and come round to a site. But if they're not going to carry out a site visit, then 9 times out of 10, they're not going to give you an accurate. They're not going to be able to give you an accurate costing, because they need to establish what your access is like. You know, if it's a rear extension, what the access is like for getting materials around the back, for getting machinery around to do foundations, etc. So all, you know, what the neighbours are, what they're dealing with, you know, what part of the, is it on a main road? Is it got double yellows in front of it? You know, all these sorts of things. So which can affect the cost. So you know, they need to understand if they're digging through an existing slab or an existing patio, or is there wooden decking in the way? You just see what I mean. So they always need to come down there, and they need to check. They need to carry out their own diligent checks on the, you know, on what's on site. You know, are the drains in the right place? Are they, you know, do they correlate with the drawings that I've got, and so on. So the more you see this builder checking, then the more likely you're going to get an accurate price. So you've now got your builders around. They're all giving you accurate prices. They've all been round. And you're sat at home for 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks, waiting for the prices to come in anxiously.
Yeah, and so this is the point as well, really. Like we're just saying with the quantity surveyor, you said about the prices should all be within about 5 to 10%. If you haven't got a quantity surveyor, you've just skipped that step, right? And your architect isn't leading the tender, so you're doing this all yourself, right? You've foregone a lot of the advice that you've just given. And at this stage, you're going out and the builders' quotes, you've got 3, 4, 5 quotes from different builders, and they're 20, 25, 30% within one another. Is that the kind of red flag that you should be looking at and thinking either there's something wrong with the builder or there's something wrong with what I've supplied them? Is that what you'd be thinking if that was the case?
Exactly that. If you have, say you've gone out for 3 or 4 quotes and they all come in very different from each other, then that is a red flag for lots of reasons that you've just said. You know, first, is the information on the drawings accurate? You know, are they, in other words, is there any part of the drawings which is left to the builder's interpretation? Yeah. So, you know, like I said, we touched on it earlier, for example, to structural engineers' details. Yeah. You know, if there is anything on there that is not specific, anything on the drawings, that could be a reason. So, you know, you've got a problem. It could be that the builders, you know, that you've chosen are all are not like for like builders. They're all different sized builders, if you like. So to be extreme, you've gone to McAlpines and then to the man in the van around the corner and then the medium-sized builder. So you are going to get 3 very different prices. You know, one's going to have more overheads than the other, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So there could be it could be that the builders are not even understanding the plans properly, as accurate as they may be. They're not understanding properly, or they're trying to cut costs on the materials. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And probably going for a cheaper style of material, which again is where, you know, the specification comes into play. You know, specifying exactly what's required. So there could be a lot of reasons. Not understood what they can't see, i.e. drains and all of that. Yeah. You know, it's their interpretation of the drawing. So yeah, that is a red flag to a multitude of things.
How many people get bitten because they're in that scenario? They haven't had the quantity surveyor do all their stuff, the architect, and then they get the range of quotes in, and they look at the 5. And they go, well, these 3 guys right at the top are clearly trying to mug me off. I'm going to go for one of the lower quotes. They actually instruct one of those builders. That builder starts doing it, and then they get into that wasn't on the drawings. That wasn't.
Most of them end up hitting a loss. Look, you only have to look at the TV. You only have to watch the TV. All the different build programs. I mean, I know it's all about jeopardy and calamity and all of that, you know, because it makes it entertainment. But how many of them on these well-known programs end up getting caught out with things they didn't know, they didn't see? And I sit there. I mean, I don't watch a lot of them because it's a bit like a busman's holiday, but the ones I do watch and it happens on, I sit there and I say, you know, I'm shouting at the screen saying, if only you'd have done this and done that. You know, the things we talked about, you would not be having this situation.
Yeah.
The thing is with most people, understandably so. The thing is with most people, they are reluctant to pay for stuff that they don't think they're getting tangible results from in construction. So what I mean by that is, an architect could sit there and say, look, you really should pay for this, you should pay for that. And all his advice, her advice would be perfectly accurate, okay? Talking on the same lines as me, making sure they're protecting the client. But the client will sit there and say, do you know what? I'm going to be giving him an extra £5,000. I could be putting all that in my house. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, look, I really can't be doing this. You know, I'm just going to take my drawings and run. They, of course, end up getting bills for 15 grand extra, 20 grand extra. And that's it happens on the TV program. So my direct answer to that is most of the people end up getting caught.
Right.
Not by me,
No,
but I have been in the situation, because I do try my best, but I have been in the situation where halfway through a job, the client will say, well, I thought we were having this. And I'll say, well, no, it's not on the drawings, and I wasn't told, it's not in the specification. How can I possibly know? Well, we've got to have it because it's something we've always wanted. Not realised they haven't then budgeted for the cost because they've only accepted my quotation. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this thing they've always wanted that's not indicated anywhere on the drawings or described in the specification, they haven't really got the budget for, but they want it because they still see some of their budget left in the bank and think they're doing well and can afford it. And they can't control, and that's what. So it happens most of the time.
Yeah, and you probably get caught up in this as well, as being one of those higher quotes at the very beginning, the ones that get fobbed off because they think you're trying to mug them off because you've actually taken the time and you've got the experience to realise, look, I'm filling in the blanks here, and I know this is going to hit you later on. This is why the quote's higher.
As any of our clients will tell you, we are completely open book. So what we do is we give the client an accurate price, okay? Any changes, any unforeseen, which are completely mitigated because I make sure that there are hardly any as you go forward. But if there is anything, it's all covered in variation orders properly. It's priced up first before you go away and just do the work. So, but yes, and quite often we are slightly more expensive than competitors because I am making sure that I don't get into problems and I price things properly as they should be priced.
Which actually makes
I use my experience and know if it's not on the drawings, I know what's going to come up. You know, not every time, and it's not my responsibility, but I try and use my initiative and say, well, he's going to need that here, they're going to need this there, so I better allow for it just in case. Yeah,
which actually ends up being cheaper in the long run.
It always ends up being cheaper in the long run.
Right, and then, okay, so you've got your quotes. Step 8 on our list is to ensure your architect has met and satisfied all and any planning conditions. Or any planning conditions. So these are the planning conditions that are actually a part of your planning permission when it was granted, right?
That's correct. Now, some planning permissions get the standard conditions, but most of them get, I'll say some planning permissions get next to no conditions. But whether you've got next to no conditions or 50 conditions, I say, you must make sure that all conditions are cleared with the planners before you start building. Okay, that's crucial. That's important. Anybody that allows you to go along and say, well, we can clear the conditions as you go along would, in my opinion, be wrong. Because let's just say one of the conditions is, which is quite a usual condition, the planners say, yes, here's your planning permission, but one of the conditions is you need to tell us what sort of bricks you're going to use and what sort of tiles you're going to use. Now, let's just say that the bricks, if this is an extension, I mean, we're by and large here talking about extension works, renovation works, alteration works, rather than new builds. Okay, new builds are just as important and can be done in exactly, lots of this process has to be done the same way. But condition clearing, in terms of extensions and alterations, can give you a problem because if your bricks in your existing building are discontinued and you have to match into those bricks, the bricks that you choose need to be cleared and approved by the council, the planners. So if you then go ahead and say, and your builder says, well, we'll just carry on building, these are as close to match as we can get, not that it is available, as we can get. This is another one of the builders making sure they're getting their value in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they do that and they start building the walls and the planner says, hang on, we don't like those bricks, you're wrong, you're in a problem, naturally. You could even be made to take the brickwork down because the council will consider the condition hasn't been met because the bricks are not a good enough match. They might suggest another one, and you'll say to your builder, well, why didn't you suggest that? Well, they're not available. I'll have to wait 8 weeks for those bricks. So what? At least they're the right brick.
Yeah.
You know. But the builder wants to get on with the work, so he's got the next nearest. So that's just an example, and it's probably an extreme example, but always make sure that your architect or you clears all conditions and meets all conditions before you start to build.
Yeah, cool. All right. And then, so pretty much there now. So step 9. So at this point, you've done all of those, you've done that, you've got your conditions sorted, and you've settled on a builder as well. You know who you're going to go with. So this step is really to meet with them again properly, and this is where you're going to discuss kind of like the finer contractual kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, now this is so important, and I know so many people don't do that. They've had their one meeting with the builder prior, they've had a long conversation, a 2-hour conversation. You know, he's charmed them. They've gone through all the building, how he's going to price it, all of this, blah blah blah. He's then gone away. He's given you a price, and you're going to accept the price. And the next time you see him is when he turns up on site. Big mistake. Big mistake. Do not do that. When you know which builder you're going to go for, arrange a meeting straight away with that builder. You need to be discussing things like the hours they're going to work, how you expect. You know, you need one of the first things you must ask for is a build program. So the builder should always willingly supply you with a build program. So you've then got almost a calendar of works, if you like. You know, it's a diary, you know, and you can plan your life around things that you're expecting to happen at certain times throughout your build. That's point 1. You need to discuss with them where they want to store materials, making sure they don't ruin your lawns, your driveway, and also you need to get them to explain to you how they're going to protect your house, your driveway, your land, okay? Any objects that are in the way, anything that needs moving. You need to talk to them about, you know, when to expect men and women on site, and when to expect them to leave site, you know. You need to understand what their health and safety is, more importantly. You know, have they got health and safety invoked? Have they got CDM, Construction Design Management, invoked? Does your job need CDM? And the builder will tell you this. You need to see for yourself his insurances. You need to see physical copies of his insurances to make sure all his insurance is in order. You need to know that if, for example, he's using any specialist machinery and all that, you know, that the people using that machinery on site will have proper accreditation, you know, the tickets as we call them, and so on. So just think about all these things. Again, architects and quantity surveyors can help you with this, so that you know what to expect. If the architect runs the tender process, this is a meeting that they will normally have, that they will call with the builder. They will chair a meeting between you and the builder, the architect, if the architect is running the process. If it isn't, if it's your own process, then quite often, you know, it's prudent to bring in somebody get some advice from, say, a quantity surveyor or the architect, you know, even get them to write down a list of the things to ask for. But, you know, there are things that the architects can't know about, especially if you're living in the property, about, you know, if your water's going to be cut off, how long is it going to be cut off for? You know, is my electric going to be cut off? Will that affect me? You know, all these sorts of things. Are you taking the roof off my existing house? Will I need to move out? So it's all this. And if you already know you need to move out, what date, how and when? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all those sorts of things. So you need to discuss this. You know, if we're having skips delivered, where do you plan to keep the skips? You know, and so on. There must be, you would know yourself. You'd be sitting there thinking, oh, what are they going to do here? What happens here? What happens there? All these questions, just write down in list form and go through them meticulously with the builder until you're satisfied. I hasten to add, don't let them rush you until you are satisfied.
Yeah.
And if needs be, if it makes you feel comfortable, you've told them that you're going to award them the contract, but write back to them the notes of the meeting. It was agreed at our meeting of such and such a date, such and such a time, the following, if you like, or the following was agreed. And write back to them and get them to, you know, to understand and acknowledge that what was said in the meeting wasn't just talk to allow them to carry on. They meant it.
Yeah.
Very important.
Okay, cool. And then, so the final step, number 10, is instruct your builder. And this is just signing on the dotted line and then getting ready for them to actually start, right? As simple as that.
To instruct your builder is exactly that. So you've now got a contract from your builder. In whatever form that contract is materialised between you and them, you have a contract. Before you sign that contract, please make sure, first and foremost, that everything you expect to be included for in the price that they have given you is included for. So again, if you don't know yourself, if you can't work it out 100% for yourself, go back to the architect and or the quantity surveyor. Okay, do this. Secondly, have any, and I can't say this strongly enough, have any contract in whatever form it comes checked over by a solicitor or a quantity surveyor or an architect or whoever you want to take your advice from. I mean, more importantly, a solicitor, but it's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
But always get it checked over. And only then, and once you are 100% happy, sign it, and away you go. You're building. But if you follow my steps, you're not just building, you're going to build comfortably, accurately, and you're not going to get banged with a price.
Yeah. All right. That's all the point. Thank you.